BBC Radio Surrey.
Now, it's 9 minutes to 8. A group of students from Surrey are behind a rather ambitious project to write and produce an independent film. It will be called Flesh and Oil and will be the graduation project for the students at the University for the Creative Arts in Farnham. The story looks at a disease which has threatened humanity. Oh, what an idea! But funding the film and creating it during a global pandemic is proving quite a challenge, as I'm sure you can sympathise with. I'm now joined by Logan Bailey, who is the producer, and also Astyn Webb, who's the director. Very, very good morning to you both. So starting off then with you, Logan, tell us more about the plot of the film. It sounds somewhat familiar.
Yeah, it's a hard time right now that we're living in, and that's going to affect creativity and how people choose to write and all sorts. But the film is about a disgruntled and sarcastic factory worker named John who learns to drop his prejudice when he meets this glitched android named Evie, who seems to showcase signs of empathy. Is that right, Astyn? Is that what we're doing?
Does that sound about right to you, Astyn?
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, it is about a world that's sort of been taken over by a pandemic, but at the core of the film is the relationship between this guy who hates robots and this robot who you can't help but like. So yeah, Logan pretty much nailed it.
And so where did the idea come from, and at what point did you have the idea?
So the way we worked is we had to choose a script to work on, basically, and then sort of pitch for it. But our writer, because he knew that we'd be filming in these circumstances, he wrote a script that allowed us to sort of film outside, have characters wearing masks. So it just sort of seemed right to set the film during a pandemic. And yeah, he sort of created these characters that are really great and really interesting.
And you're also having to find funding for it and also manage to film it. Presumably that there are a few obstacles when it comes to that.
That's the biggest problem right now. I mean, it's a problem for everyone right now. It's just, with students, we have to fundraise the entire budget for the film ourselves, pretty much. So we have to making all these campaigns online and make sure our film stands out and is snappy. It's, so unsurprisingly, it's really hard to fundraise when you're going around asking for donations and everyone's on furlough. It's a lot tougher this year. People can't really donate when they're struggling to make ends meet themselves, and we're of course very understanding of that. So we just got to really push the film and its ambition and really explain to people that it is definitely worth putting their money into. Outside of that, we're also doing things different kind of sales and different marketing tactics like videos and stuff to try and boost up that budget in other ways.
Yeah, so how much money does it take to make a film on this scale?
I mean, on this scale, it varies. The graduation films from the University of the Creative Arts typically have quite a wide scale. Sometimes they're as low as about $2,000, and sometimes they're as high as about 10, maybe even 15. With Flesh and Oil, we hope to go somewhere in the middle of that. In a perfect world, we'd be able to make this film at about $6,000 or so. That's about where we're aiming personally.
Right, and is there something about it kind of almost in a way forces you to be a bit more creative because of budget constraints?
Yeah, quite often with graduation films at our university, we often see students setting up bake sales and doing things on campus. They rent out venues along local pubs and local restaurants to get people involved in something physical, but obviously that's not something we can do now. So we've had to be creative, so we've made a cool little fundraiser teaser video. And yeah, it's just thinking outside the box, and I know we've got people involved in the crew that are putting together ideas. Logan and another crew member of ours have been spending hours brainstorming different ways to try and raise money for this film.
Yeah, and so how can people find out more about it, about Flesh and Oil, and perhaps follow your progress and maybe help you if that's something they're inclined to do?
We have an Instagram at flesh.and.oil and a Facebook, Flesh and Oil UK, and from there we'll be posting updates, and you can find links to our fundraisers, and we'll be posting regularly to sort of keep people updated on how we're going, how we're doing. Some cool new stuff is coming pretty soon, so yeah, you can follow us there and keep track of how we're doing.
And finally, Logan, it's been such a difficult time for all the creative industries. What are your ambitions for the future, and has it kind of changed how you feel about the future in this industry?
I mean, for students all over the world in all kinds of fields, we're going to graduate next year and nobody has any clue what's going to happen, because it's just job searching is near impossible right now. So once we leave university and get into that wide field, a lot of us really don't know what we're going to do, especially if you're specializing in a creative subject like we are with filmmaking, because like the big studios, they're having a hard enough time filming right now as well. I know that like Mission Impossible was shut down like 3 times, hence the epic Tom Cruise run. But it's the kind of thing where it's like, we don't know what's going forward. So it's really hard for us to kind of map that. You know, there's a constant state of anxiety amongst all the students. But this will definitely, in terms of filmmaking, this will change the industry forever. As now it's putting more of a focus on streaming, and it's also putting a bigger focus on independent content, because of course not as much content is getting made, so maybe cheaper and smaller and more independent artists, such as ourselves, because of that we will stand out more. So hopefully it will actually help us in some ways and get us some wider traction.
And potentially as well, the way that we're watching films, we're not watching them in the cinema. So that kind of whole big budget cinematic thing, it's kind of wasted on the small screen watching it at home on the telly, which kind of does lend itself to more sort of indie productions, doesn't it?
Exactly. And I think that's going to slowly impact the way audiences look at films and feel about films, because of course you want to see the big, massive blockbusters in the cinemas and the IMAX screens, but if it's going more streaming or more like TV, I think you need something that will engage people on an emotional level and connect to people on an emotional level, which I think is maybe more personal to the viewer. I mean, even with this film, it tackles themes of like empathy and prejudice, technology and classism, but just talking about something like empathy, it connects to me on a level, because I have Asperger's, and I found that really fascinating to kind of look at it under the guise of AI technology. So it's all about finding in that hits people on a personal level, and then you've got that connection between the product and the audience. That's what really makes it memorable.
Yeah, well, it's so good talking to you both. Thank you. And you'll have to come back on and tell us when the film is a roaring success as well. Thank you to you both, Logan Bailey, producer, and Astyn Webb, director of the film Flesh and Oil, which is part of their graduation project at the University for the Creative Arts in Farnham. Thank you.
Every night at 7.